Good to see you, children. Top of the morning to you. Hope you and your family are healthy and safe during these uncertain and unprecedented times. Learning is very important because learning is essential to our existence. Just like food nourishes our bodies, information and continued learning nourishes our minds. Today, the class is divided into two parts. Part 1, I am going to help you to widen your knowledge. Why don't I tell you few phrases that you can use to wish someone happy birthday in different ways to make their day better? Are you excited about it? Well, happy birthday sounds like an old cliche. We often repeat these expressions and create no positive impressions. So today we are going to learn some new ways to wish. So let's begin the class in a swish. We are going to learn some fun, new and interesting ways for you to wish someone when it's celebration time happy birthday. How about we say something more fun like wishing you many more candles to blow? This is a sweet way of saying I wish that you live a long life. Next, a million magic wishes for you. A million magic wishes for you. Next one, let's raise the toast to you and your life. Let's raise the toast to you and your life. This is good if you are saying it to a friend. Next way, have a good one or have a great one. You could say have a good one or have a great one. Next way, congratulations on another spin around the sun. Congratulations on another spin around the sun. Next way, congratulations for surviving another year. Congratulations for surviving another year. Suppose if your friend likes dark humor, you could say to them, congratulations on surviving another year. Next way, sending laughter and joy on your way. Sending laughter and joy on your way. This is semi-formal and convenient to use in most situations. Okay, this is semi-formal and convenient to use in most situations. Sending laughter and joy on your way. So next way, happy to you. Happy to you. Notice I haven't said birthday. I have just said happy to you. This is cute and affectionate and I like to use this a lot for friends and family. Happy to you. You know above all, what the person is going to remember is when you make them feel special on their special day. So go out of your way, try to give them those greetings personally and sound happy and excited as you do that. Make sure you sound super happy and enthusiastic when you are wishing someone because even more than the words, it is this that they are going to remember the most. This is the second part of your class. So in this part, we are going to continue the prose which we started in our previous class. Before getting into today's class, let me recall what you have learnt in the previous video. The topic of the prose is, yes, the best Christmas present in the world. So the narrator went to a junk shop in Bridport looking for a roll-top desk. The junk seller informed him that the desk he picked up was made of oak. The narrator found it cheaper than the others he had seen. Although the desk was not in proper shape, yet he bought it and started working on it. He took out the damaged cover. He observed that water and fire took a toll. He opened the drawers easily, but for the last one he had to apply force. He took out a tin box with a note on it with instructions to bury the letter with her. Out of curiosity, he read the letters that mentioned the address of the Lady Macpherson. It was written in pencil. He read the letter. Her husband was happily narrating an incident. It was Christmas morning, and they were standing in their trenches. He observed a white flag waving from the side of German soldiers. They called out Happy Christmas loudly. Soldiers from his side also wished them back cheerfully. However, the air of confusion was offering them to share snaps and sausage. About 12 soldiers started coming towards them in no man's land. Initially, the narrator was apprehensive, yet he made no efforts to stop them. He was rather happy that they were celebrating happiness with his enemy soldiers. He further added that he liked the way the German officer came towards him and introduced him. He wished him Happy Christmas and told him that he should play the cello in the orchestra. Mr. Macpherson greeted him and replied that he was a school teacher from Dorset. He shared rum and sausage. Keep your pencil ready, children, to write the meaning for the hard words. So, already I explained 7 paragraphs. Yes or no? Yes. Now, paragraph number 8. So, for that, take page number 12. Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. And we talked, Connie. How we talked? He spoke almost perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So, out there in no man's land, we walked off Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were hurdles of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of our wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. So, meaning for ration. So, underline the word ration, right? Fixed amount of a commodity. Fixed amount of a commodity officially allowed to each person. Okay? Ration, fixed amount of a commodity officially allowed to each person. I repeat, fixed amount of a commodity officially allowed to each person. Next, underline Bathsheba, Gabriel Oak, Sergeant Troy. Okay, Bathsheba, Gabriel Oak, and Sergeant Troy. So, these are the characters in the book Far from Madding Crowd. Okay, Bathsheba, Gabriel Oak, and Sergeant Troy are the characters in the book Far from the Madding Crowd. Next, huddles. Okay, crowd together. Huddles, crowd together. Next, marzipan, a sweet covering on a cake made from sugar, eggs and almonds. Okay, marzipan, a sweet covering on a cake made from sugar, eggs and almonds. So, huddles, crowd together. Ration, fixed amount of a commodity officially allowed to each person. So, Bathsheba and then, yes, Sergeant Troy, Gabriel Oak are the characters in the book Far from the Madding Crowd. Huddles, crowd together, marzipan, a sweet covering on a cake made from sugar, eggs and almonds. So, this paragraph, Hans expressed delightfulness upon hearing about Dorset. He revealed that he knows the place quite well, but it turned out that he had never visited this place or any other in England. He knew so much about England and all from school or English books that he read. Jim mentioned how they shared his quota of rum and Hans sausages. Jim's excitement about their conversation was clear from the letter. He revealed that they talked about Hans' favorite author, Thomas Hardy, and his book, Far from the Madding Crowd. He told Connie how they talked about the characters of the book, like Bathsheba, Gabriel Oak, and Sergeant Troy. They talked about each other's families. Hans, too, was married with a 6-month-old son. They even shared the leftover cake that Jim's wife had made. Hans loved the marzipan and expressed it was the best he ever had. Jim was of the same opinion. Jim mentions how they both agreed on everything despite being each other's enemy. He tells how he looked at the no man's land and could see men in grey and khaki enjoying themselves. They were smoking, eating, laughing, drinking, and most of all, celebrating. Jim mentions how it was a very unique Christmas party. Next para. Then someone I don't know who brought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts. And the next thing we knew it was Tommy against Fred's out in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. Jim Macpherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. Write the meaning for goal post. Either of the two upright posts of a goal. Okay? Either of the two upright posts of a goal. I repeat, either of the two upright posts of a goal. Next word, mingling. Underline the word mingling. Mix or cause to mix together. You can write mix or you can write cause to mix together. Okay, mix or cause to mix together. So goal post, either of the two upright posts of a goal. Mingling, mix or cause to mix together. So this paragraph explains Jim mentions that someone who he does not know brought out a football and next they know they were having a football match in the midst of the no man's land. They used great coats to make the goalpost. Hans and Jim only watched and cheered for the teams. They clapped and stamped their feet to keep themselves warm also. Jim could even notice their breaths mixing up in the air. Hans noticed it and they both smiled at each other. After a while, Hans said that this is exactly how the dispute should be resolved and not by war. In a football match, no one loses their life, no children are orphaned, and no wives become widows. Next para. I would prefer cricket. I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning. Probably we laughed at that. And together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie, Fred's won. 2-1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs. So it was not quite fair. Through this paragraph, Jim replies to Hans' idea of resolving it with football by saying that he would rather suggest cricket because then there would be more chances of the Tommies winning. They both had a good laugh. Sadly, Jim informs that Freds won the game by 2-1. Hans generous, as he was remarked that it was because their goal was wider than that of Tommy's, which was a bit unfair. Next para. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished. The snaps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. This paragraph explains they ran out of rum, snaps, and sausages. The game was finished. Sooner than they realized, it all came to an end. Jim gave Hans his best wishes and conveyed how he hoped for things to end soon and end well, so that they could all go home and reunite with their families. Next para. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly. I felt. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of grey coated men drifting back towards their trenches. So, this paragraph says Hans replied by saying that reuniting with their families and for things to end well is something that every soldier wants. He then wishes Jim well and expresses that he shall always remember that day, and so shall Jim. Hans went away after saluting in a slow pace and turned back only once to wave. Jim felt as if Hans was walking unwillingly but soon. He was one of the grey coated men who moved back to their trenches. Next para. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. It was stilly nashed, silent night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of while shepherds watched. We exchanged carols for a while and then we all fell silent. We had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. So, underline the word dugout, meaning a shelter for soldiers made by digging a hole in the ground and covering it. So, now write the meaning for the word dugout, a shelter for soldiers made by digging, digging, digging a hole in the ground and covering it. Okay, I repeat, a shelter for soldiers made by digging a hole in the ground and covering it. Rousing, so underline the word rousing and write exciting. Rousing, exciting. Rousing, exciting. So this paragraph says, as soon as they went back to their dugout shelters, they could hear the Germans singing a carol very melodiously. They sang Silly Nashed or the Silent Night. Then the Tommies sang while shepherds watched. Just like this, they exchanged carols that night. And after a while, they were all silent. Jim calls it the time of peace and goodwill and says how he will cherish it forever. Next para. Dearest Connie, my Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon. I'm sure of it. Your loving Jim. So it explains, after telling her about the amazing Christmas night, Jim tells Connie that things will settle soon and by next Christmas the war would just be a distant memory. He tells her that his experience with them has made him realize how both the sides crave for peace. He assures her that they will be reunited soon. He then signs off. The third part of the story. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking with his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. Macpherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle headed. But at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was she was in a nursing home now, he told me. Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of town. Now write the meaning for some hard words. Burned out. So underline burned out. Destroyed by fire. So burned out, destroyed by fire. Boarded up. Boarded up. Covered with wooden boards. So boarded up, underline boarded up and write covered with wooden boards. Next, muddle headed meaning confused. Muddle headed means confused. So burned out, destroyed by fire. Boarded up, covered with wooden boards. Muddle headed, yes, confused. So this paragraph says, after reading the letter, he placed it back neatly in the envelope. The narrator could not sleep that night, and the next morning he knew exactly what he had to do. So he drove to Bridport, which was just a few miles away from his place. He asked a little boy who was walking his dog for directions to the Copper Beaches. He went there looking for the address mentioned on the letter. But house number 12 was all burnt down. Its roof was all open and the windows were covered with boards for security. To inquire about the whereabouts of Mrs. Macpherson, he knocked at the house next door. The old man in the slippers knew the lady personally. He called her a lovely lady who stayed a bit confused most of the time. But he blamed it on her age, for she was 101 years old. Her house caught fire and she was saved by the firemen. The actual cause of the fire is not known, but people suspect it to be candles. The old lady used a lot of candles as she thought electricity was too expensive. The old man told the narrator that she now lived in a nursing home named Burlington House, which is on the other side of the town. Next para. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. She is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know. no one visits. So I'm sure she will be only too pleased to see you. She took me she took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. So now write the meaning for lopsided. Lopsided, a symmetrical. Lopsided, a symmetrical. Symmetrical, a symmetrical. Matron, a woman in charge of domestic and medical arrangements at an institution. A woman in charge of domestic and medical arrangements at an institution. Dear children, matron, a woman in charge of domestic and medical arrangements at an institution. So this paragraph explains the narrator went to Burlington House nursing home, which he found quite easily. There were Christmas decorations all over. The hallway was decorated with paper chains all over, and at the end there was a Christmas tree with an asymmetrical angel on the top. He introduced himself as a friend of Mrs. Macpherson, who had come to give her a Christmas gift. He could see everyone at the dining hall. They were all singing and wore paper hats. The matron wore one such hat too. She was happy to see the narrator and even offered him a piece of mince pie as she walks him through the corridor. She tells that Mrs. Macpherson does not get visitors often as she has no family. According to her, Mrs. Macpherson would be delighted to see him. She mentions that she is not celebrating today as she was a bit confused. So they thought it would be better for her to rest. She took him to a conservatory which had chairs made of wigs and potted plants. Next para. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas, Connie." I went on. "I found this. I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. For a while she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. So underline lit up, okay, underline lit up, write the meaning, became bright with excitement. Became bright with excitement. Clear, children? Became bright with excitement. Next, suffused with. Next, underline suffused with. Write the meaning, spread all over her face. Spread all over her face. Suffused with, spread all over her face. Next, wispy. That means fine. Wispy, fine. W-I-S-P-Y, wispy, meaning fine. Last, tenderly. Tenderly, meaning with gentleness, kindness and affection. Clear, children? Tenderly means with gentleness, kindness and affection. So lit up, became bright with excitement, suffused with, spread all over her face, wispy, yes, fine, wispy, fine, tenderly, with gentleness, kindness and affection. Very good. So, inside the conservatory sat an old lady in a wheelchair with her hands folded in her lap. Her white hair was tied in a neat bun. As she sat there, she was staring at the garden when he entered. The author went and said, "Hello." She turned her attention towards him, and he continued wishing her happy Christmas and gave her the letter. She constantly looked at his face while he spoke. It was only when he handed her the tin box that her eyes became radiant due to immense happiness. After handing the tin box over to her, he explained the series of events that led him to the letter, but she didn't listen to a word he said, as she was filled with so much happiness. Nor did she say a word. She just sat there, holding the letter in her hands with a gentleness, kindness, and affection. Next para. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you would come home by Christmas, dearest," she said. "And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down." So, this paragraph says, as the author stood there silently, Connie moved and took his hand while her eyes were watery. She said that he had fulfilled his promise of being there by Christmas. She even said that he is the best Christmas present in the world. She then asked him to come near her and sit beside her. She called the author Jim. Last para. I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. "I read your letter so often, Jim. Every day I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I would love that so much. And then perhaps we will have some tea. I have made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan." So he did as she said. He went near her and sat down while she kissed him on his cheek. She told him how she read his letter daily and it made her feel like she was with him. She longed to hear his voice, but then she mentioned now that he is here with her. He can read out the letter to her in his voice. She asked if he would do that for her. She explains that she just wants to hear his voice badly, and if he could do that for her, she would love that. She suggested that they can even have tea afterwards. She then told him that she even made his favorite Christmas cake with marzipan. She is well aware of how he loved marzipan. I hope that you understand the topic clearly and also write the meaning for the hard words that I have given. Let me summarize the lesson in short. The theme of the story, The Best Christmas Present in the World, depicts friendship and universal friendliness. The narrator wants a roll top desk. He went to a junk shop in Bridport looking for a roll top desk. The narrator picks up the desk made of oak. The narrator finds it cheaper than the other desk he had seen. Although the desk which was bought by the narrator was not suitable and not in proper shape either, he started working on it. He took out the damaged cover. He observed that fire and water had taken a toll on the desk, and then he opened all the drawers present on the desk very easily. But for the last one, he had to apply some force. In the last jar, he found a tin box. He took out this tin box with a note on it, with instructions to bury the letter with her. Out of curiosity, he read all the letters present in the tiny box. A Lady Macpherson's address was mentioned in the letter. He read a letter which was written with a pencil. In that letter, her husband, captain of the English army, was happily sharing an incident held on Christmas morning, and they were standing in their trenches. He observed a white flag that was waved from the German soldiers' side. They called out Happy Christmas loudly to the soldiers from his side. They also wished them back cheerfully. However, they offered them to share snaps and sausage. About 12 soldiers started coming towards them in no man's land. Initially, the narrator was apprehensive, yet he made no efforts to stop them. Mr. Macpherson was pleased that the narrator was celebrating with his enemies. He further added that he liked the German officer's way, who came towards him and introduced himself. He wished him Happy Christmas and told him that he should play cello in the orchestra. He was surprised and greeted the German officer, and he replied that he was a school teacher from Dorset. He then shared rum and sausage. He spoke almost perfect English. He was surprised to see Dusseldorf speaking good English and knew about Dorset where he had gone. The narrator had the best time celebrating with the enemy. Next, they played football, which was a fun element. They all made goalposts by pitting great coats. Macpherson was sure of winning a game of cricket but was not any good at playing football. The Germans won the game, and to his surprise, Hans Wolff admitted their goal was wider than theirs. Soldiers of both sides said goodbye to each other and felt that the night was a memorable one. Jim concluded the letter by saying that both the German and England armies wanted peace. After reading the letter, the author could not sleep and decided to drive to Bridport. He asked the address from the boy and he went there. The old man told him that he knew Mrs. Macpherson. Her house was burnt as she used the candles instead of using electricity, considering it to be cheap. She was in a nursing home named Burlington House on Dorchester Road. He went to the nursing house, and there was a hallway and a lighted Christmas tree kept in a corner. When he entered that house, he asked for Mrs. Macpherson while waiting to observe that all the persons in the house were in the dining room and were singing and wearing a paper hat. The matron offered a mince pie and told him that she was not with others and she would be happy to have a visitor as she does not have a family. He saw a lady sitting in a wheelchair and folded hands in her lap, and her hair was in a wispy bun folding. The narrator wished her Merry Christmas and handed the box to her. She saw the tiny box with a letter and smiled. She came forward with tearful eyes. She asked him to sit and read all the letters present in the box. She wanted to hear his voice and told him that they would have a Christmas cake and marzipan. She further said that she had received the best Christmas present in the world. Okay, children, let me conclude the topic. War can only result in the hatred and destruction between two countries. But a small gesture of kindness and empathy can make this world a better place for all. The best Christmas present in the world lesson highlights how two armies, instead of hating each other, meet cheerfully to each other to celebrate the Christmas, and it becomes one of the best Christmas of their life. The story also highlights the act of kindness and empathy by the narrator when he decides to hand over the letters he found in his desk to Mrs. Macpherson, who gets really happy after receiving the last memory of his late husband. Sometimes it just takes a little kindness and empathy towards other people to make them happy. That's all today's class, children. The classwork for this lesson will be sent to you. Write your classwork neatly and without spelling errors. Meet you in the next class. Until then, be safe, be healthy, and be disciplined.